This is the inaugural OGM Wiki Call. Yay, we're gonna have a wiki. I did something interesting scheduling this call and only realized it just a couple minutes ago, which is that it's only an hour long. And so I think that's a good forcing function actually to keep us focused on task and get stuff done. So tomorrow we'll have another call, 8 a.m. Pacific. My vision for this call is that we spend about 20 or 30 minutes, hopefully 20, setting up to work together and then actually working for the rest of the call on what we think the wiki is and what we think is important about it. So let me share my screen. Another thing I'll ask is that we co-moderate this call. Because we live in Jerry's world, where it's his world and we only live in it. We're used to, can you guys share you can't see my screen yet. You can.
Yeah, we can, yes.
Oh, okay. We're used to Jerry being a great moderator. So one of the things that we're gonna have to instantiate as we do a wiki together is co-moderation and emergent action, and being okay with that and figuring out how the body language works as we work together on information artifacts and stuff like that. So even with this call, let's co-moderate. Please, I hope that within 20 or 30 minutes we get to be whoever wants to be. It's not a forced thing, but whoever wants to be can be kind of a fairly active participant in working with us. And so chime in, jump in, let's interrupt each other and all that kind of stuff. I think that's all good. First thing is our chat channel is on Mattermost, and it's called OGM Wiki, because OGM is double plus good.
Okay, so not the massive wiki channel.
And let me explain the difference between massive wiki and OGM Wiki. So, I'm going to try really, I'm going to try to make all of us really try not to get distracted by massive wiki. Massive, by the way, is spelled MASVSVF, but it's pronounced massive. So it stands for Markdown Shared Version Files. So we're kind of using this as a vision of interoperability, basically. We want them to be files because files are nice and compact, things that we know how to exchange. We want them to be more than one file, so it's files, because a wiki isn't fun if it's only one file, unless it's TiddlyWiki. And then we want it to be shared and versioned. So version is important because that means that we can break a page and fix it by just reverting. And we want them to be shared because wikis are more fun shared. Although Yuri and I just had a great conversation, and I came backwards to this realization, I think, but Yuri came to its forwards, which is that if you want a collaborative knowledge base, the best place to start is actually with a personal knowledge base, and then figure out how to federate your personal knowledge bases together into the commons. I think that's really smart and true. So that's what the share means. And then Markdown is kind of the simplest thing that could work for wiki syntax. Sometime.
Oh, sorry, and it's plain text, which is good.
And it's plain text, and it's line oriented. And that all is just amazing.
Markdown JSON, or is that two different things?
Markdown and JSON are completely different. And YAML is also completely different. You'll see them play with each other a lot because they're all simple formats that are both human readable and computer understandable, kind of. You'll hear this probably one or two times. Markdown is actually a worse syntax than the social text syntax, I think, because I invented the social text syntax. But I don't whine about it anymore. It took me 5 or 10 years to not whine about it, I think. But Markdown is less than perfect in some ways, and it is completely perfect because it works. So, you know, I got over it, and it is perfect as a collaboration medium, and it's clunky in lots of ways, and let's just deal with it and live with it. So first place to collaborate is the chat channel. If I miss anything important, somebody tell me that I'm missing it. The next thing is, and I'm actually going to try to write this down in the channel, even though I'm busy thinking of too many things. I think, so one of the things OGM and its brethren, sisterin are good at is capturing stuff. So we're good at recording stuff. We are not yet good at harvesting stuff. So my tradition, the thing that I've taught people as I'm teaching them collaboration, is capture and digest together in the moment over like spewing and recording and then hoping to capture it later. This is a good wiki-centric way to work. So especially when we're doing OGM Wiki stuff, I'm going to suggest that we capture the good stuff. Thanks, Charles. In writing in the moment. So one of the cool things about Markdown is that I don't know if you've noticed, Mattermost actually uses Markdown for formatting its posts. So Markdown, if you just type stuff, you're typing Markdown more or less, and so everything is wonderful and good. So as we capture stuff, it's okay to type plain text and then go back and make it fancier with links and formatting and stuff. Okay, I didn't really hit Massive Wiki. I only got halfway into that. Massive Wiki is the idea that we could use Markdown and shared files and versioning to make the world a better place by making wikis that way. The wikis that we make that way will federate nicely. They'll also turn into brains and other amazingly cool things. And they play well with lots of other stuff, like some of the emerging knowledge tools like Obsidian, for instance, or static site generators, or ebook / web documentation systems like Docusaurus or Sphinx. It opens up a whole ecosystem of not just wikis. It opens up a lot of information and knowledge sharing. So that's the good news. The interesting part of the news is, despite lots of effort by me and, well, some effort anyway, spare time effort at least from me and Bill and Charles and other folks, Massive Wiki is not quite baked yet. I think if I were smart, we've got it to the point where we can explain kind of what it is and what we're doing. And we've, especially Bill, has worked through some of the nuts and bolts of how we could write down the steps for somebody to do the same kinds of things that we're doing to start playing around with Massive Wiki. So at some point, maybe this week, we've kind of switched from feeling like everything was sharp edges to getting at least butter knives with dull edges, and the ability to kind of hold them in our hand most of the time without cutting ourselves. Even though if you look in the Massive Wiki channel, Bill and I are cutting ourselves on the sharp edge of a butter knife all the time and rolling on the floor laughing about it. So
there was also that kitchen metaphor that came up. That's relevant.
Oh my God.
Right? It's like the traffic metaphor meets the kitchen with the knives metaphor.
It's very true. For a while, we were cars bumping into each other, not bumping into each other with fender benders, but now we've got sharp knives and dull knives. So the okay news is that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. The way I put it in the channel, the light at the end of the tunnel is, it's still a few trains, but it's also the end of the tunnel. We can see clear to actually having instructions and videos and stuff telling regular people how to use Massive Wiki, and everything's wonderful and good. So Massive Wiki is the idea that Bill over here and me over here and Charles over here can have, amongst all of our various knowledge repositories, we can have this blue one, which we share amongst each other like magic. So the sharing right now in the middle, we're using Git for various good and some bad reasons. And another thing that we can do, part of the reason for this diagram is because you can put another tap on this Git thing and turn the Markdown into HTML. This was originally our first experiment was 11T Garden. I'm now super jazzed about Jinja Static. So then it turns into HTML pages, just like a regular website. We can put that on Netlify kind of for free, even, and then people who don't know or care what wikis are can look at it like a regular web page. So this is going to be kind of a model for OGM Wiki, and don't think about that too much if it's scary. But we'll each have, those who care will have a copy of OGM Wiki on their own computer. And maybe they'll work on it with one or more people together. Maybe they'll work on it by themselves. It will automatically be published up to the web as a website automatically. Yes, Jinja Static. Okay, so now I hope that we can get, so the easiest thing that could possibly work is I open up Obsidian and we talk about OGM Wiki, and I make wiki pages. And then later even during this call, we could actually exchange it back and forth a little bit. So I've got way too many wikis now, massive wikis in my Obsidian, but let's get over to this one. As it turns out, yesterday I created an empty OGM Wiki. It's up in GitHub in github/OpenGlobalMind/OGM Wiki, where it should live. So the simplest possible thing that could work is that we just chat and I type. It would be a little bit more fun if we had one or two or all of us being able to transit the wiki together. I was hoping, Jerry and I looked at HackMD, which is an online Markdown editor. And you can hack HackMD into a wiki. I didn't find an easy way to do that when I started playing with it. So I thought we might all be in HackMD instead of Google Docs, for instance, editing together. But I think we'll defer that maybe at least until tomorrow's call or something. So now let me pause. We'll talk a little bit about how best to collaborate, because I think all of us will be okay if we're talking and then we stop and I type. I think it would also be okay if we went even a little bit slower than that and got one or two or a couple of us up on moving the OGM Wiki, which is now this, back and forth between us. Another hack that we could use is to have everybody collaborating in meeting words, maybe. I'd rather not use Google Docs for this. So we could have everybody collaborating on meeting words, and I can copy and paste from meeting words over to Obsidian. So what do we think?
I'm wondering if you could take some questions from whoever is still puzzled by what this is, because I mean,
I went really fast.
You described it, you went pretty quickly, and then you got into geeky stuff like Jinja Static, who sounds like another member of the underground cult.
It's a band.
She's got red hair, though.
It's a member of the band. There's a band. Jinja Static is one of the members.
It's an indie rock, alternative rock, heavy Christian Jewish metal band.
Indeed.
But I'm just thinking, are there any questions? Is everybody along for the ride, or has anybody fallen off the back of the bed?
I'm off the back of the bed, but I'll just listen.
Very briefly, Obsidian is a text editor that happens to really love Markdown files, and it's really pretty, and it does a couple things well. GitHub is a place where you can store files that has the benefit of version control and open sharing. There's this whole notion, Judy, I don't know how much you've been exposed to Git and GitHub, but GitHub is where open source software has gone, but also a whole bunch of other things. And part of the reason open source software went there is that the governance mechanisms for how code gets improved by a bunch of different people, the dynamics of GitHub are better than the previous host for those things, which was called SourceForge, that had a different model for how that worked. So more than you need to know about how open source software has been developed, but GitHub buys us a kind of version control and access control and sharing that just storing a Markdown file, a simple file on your own file folder, or even a Google Drive doesn't do. That's why there's this GitHub thing. So when Pete is showing Obsidian, this editor, accessing a file, there's some magic behind the scenes of configuring, getting into GitHub, getting yourself authenticated and figuring out how to even use GitHub, putting the right link into Obsidian so it knows where to look for the file. There's like a bunch of magic happening behind the curtain so that when you hit save, it's actually saving to the right place. And that's just a brief start for the description. Lauren, you had a question, I think. I'm interrupting your meal making, sorry.
So I'm kind of embarrassed asking questions in this group of heavy hitters.
No stupid questions, go for it.
Likewise, Lauren.
Go for it.
Okay, so I mean, there are just some needs that, like some dreams from a database that I don't know how hard they are to include. And so one thing that I would like would be to have a database of resources, which is a little bit different. When then, you know, like the P2P wiki has like all these like people and projects and stuff like that. But what I think would also be a huge innovation would be a database that shows like people where you can access people. Like this person, if you're doing this subject, you can reach this person through this access point. Like this is where they will deal with you. This is where this thing becomes an actual resource that you can interact with and use and count on to promote this idea or to do this one thing. And also that to start building these ideas and text things, you know, like how developers have, they build things in such a way like Legos that they can be put together and you can't, like outside of code, it's hard to build things in that way with text. So what I'm trying to say is that if things like
I'm doing great, but I'm in the middle of a phone call, so can I call you all back? I need to make an appointment for my car.
So if I don't know if it would be possible to have resources basically list the inputs and outputs of resources. Like in order to access this resource, you need to do, or you need to have these other things. And then this resource can then output this other thing. Does that make any sense? Or
yeah, I like them. So let's practice our capturing. I think this is what I tried, or this is what I got out of what you said, Lauren. Did I kind of capture that? Okay.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that it should feel like I want a database that makes me feel rich. That it's not just like these are people in an encyclopedia, like on Wikipedia. I can't access any of those resources, just like, oh, there's a person, this is their bio. And I want to be able to go through the database, like when I'm doing the grant writing thing, I want to go through this database and be like, this person, if you get this person and this idea or this essential question, this person is available. Their time is available. They will work for this idea or this particular space. So for me, it turns into a completely different database. If it's like gold nuggets that I can actually harvest, I can connect these together and be like, ooh, ooh, I can put this together with that, and then build something which is accessible. Does that, I don't know if that makes any sense.
Do you want to tackle that, or shall I?
Let me add a couple things in first, Ray.
Cool.
So George, which I don't think he's here. George asked a good prompt on the forum post that I made. And so I came up with this list of, so actually, let me sidetrack a little bit. George said, okay, cool. Sounds wonderful. Original conditions will have a large impact on the wiki as a complex adaptive knowledge system. And I said, I agree, and I don't want to have I don't have a purpose for an OGM wiki. I really want the OGM community to have a purpose for the wiki. So then I said, yeah, actually, I guess we're the folks who are here, for instance, we're really doing some scaffolding along with stuff that we want. Lauren, I think your things are great, and I want that too. But it made me sit down and go, yeah, actually, practically, there's probably going to be a people directory, a guilds directory, that not a full-blown calendar, but at least a list of regular meetings, and so there's some stuff that is already really obvious to be in a wiki database kind of thing. So Lauren, when you say people plus plus their APIs or resources plus their APIs and system requirements, to use overly geeky language, I think that's kind of the when I write people directory, I'd kind of want that, and maybe I didn't even think about that actually, though, where and how to access them. But that's, yeah, I totally agree. The other kind of the good news and bad news is that we're going to be doing this in fairly plain texty stuff, which back in my social text days when we had a wiki, people would do amazing things with just some plain text and a little bit of formatting. So all of this stuff we can definitely do in a wiki. It's going to be kind of simple and easy to build and a little bit hard for people to understand because you don't have all the handholding of the structure of the database. But the good news is the people who are using it are going to hack it every time they do an edit. It's going to change the way that they are using it, and they're going to make it better and worse and stuff like that. So, and then the other thing to know, as Vincent and I are already talking about the people directory and where to stash machine readable data that's not annoying for the human. So we also, even Lauren, as you're saying this, we're going to, Vincent and I already have kind of thought through what, the possibilities of putting it together so that we'll put stuff in the wiki and mark it up a little bit. And there's George. We'll put it in the wiki, mark it up a little bit with some structured data, and the two things will live fairly peaceably together and enable Vincent to suck everything into Airtable and Catalyst and lots of other places. So thanks for letting me run on, Jerry.
Not at all. Just to elaborate, I think one of the early things we think we can do with Massive Wiki OGM Wiki is give everybody a template Markdown file for a profile, personal profile, and say, hey, please pick up this template, fill it out for yourself, save it to this particular location. It might be a subdirectory on the shared OGM Wiki. That's just a detail. But in so doing, we would then be crowdsourcing a directory of who's involved and what's up and all that, and we would figure that out. Now, there's a big leap between having a bunch of files that have descriptive information and something like the directories that Vincent is crafting out of Airtable. There's a kind of a leap there, but you can absorb any of those Markdown files into a power tool like Airtable. And there's a bunch of different things we're talking about. But a piece of what we're trying to figure out is, how do you then leave in simple Markdown files, either in the file or around the file, how do you leave context like metadata, semantic data, other kinds of interesting sort of information? And that's like an active researchy part of what Massive Wiki is and what OGM is trying to be helpful in. Because the all singing, all dancing tool that lets you just plug things in that you're looking for, Lauren, it lies somewhere, I think, in that middle space, because I don't know that you want to become an Airtable jockey and pay for Airtable every month and all of that kind of stuff. Although if you did that, you could sort of get there. There are also purpose-built project management, group project management tools like Mondays, I think it's called. It's beautiful. I was on Mondays briefly it's just really pretty. Asana, there's a bunch of others that do full-blown project management. And the thing I think, and this is just me projecting, the thing I think you want, Lauren, is the thing I think I want, which is power tools for connectors, which goes back to, hey, I just met Jane, and I think I'd like to introduce Jane to these 3 people, offer her to join these 4 conversations, make sure I memorialize her in our sort of internal database, ask her to fill out this skills survey, and then on from there. Like, what does that look like? And then as Jane opts into joining 3 projects she found in our project dashboard, we then know who Jane is and what her superpowers are because she filled out some of these forms. I think, I don't know, if I'm talking through it in a way that matches what you'd like to have, let us know, because I'd love to see that as well, because the amount of work I do when I meet a new individual to record them in different places and connect them and offer them things and so forth is insane. Like, it's dumb, right? And as a connector, all that stuff should be simple and transparent in the background. It'd be like, oh, great to meet you. Would you just follow this link, and then it'll clarify a bunch of stuff and log you in and get you to sort of become make yourself a part of our community, for example, and find your way to our projects alongside a couple of human routers. I just riffed on a couple of different things that may have been confusing more than clarifying. Sorry, go ahead, Pete.
Thanks. Did that make sense, Lauren? Did that help? Does that?
Yeah, I think it's just it's important to me that we have these one that it's flexible enough so we don't have like a meta schema that limits us. Like, we can have many meta schemas in the mix that we can link to.
The good news is plain text or Markdown wikis are super flexible. The bad news is they're super flexible.
Okay, so it can be a big mess, basically.
It will be a big mess.
Great.
Yep. In all the good and bad ways that we mean that.
It'll be as tidy as our social protocols and our attempts to automate cleanliness are. Go ahead, Yuri.
Yeah, I think as we discussed with Peter, I think the idea of having a sort of community wiki is great, because it gives you a focal point. This is where everything that comes can be fed into, and it's sort of community curated and community available. But I just tried to explain, I didn't quite get to the end, but I'm building this interpersonal wiki. But the really interesting part with trail marks is that you could actually run all this as a sidecar to anything which is community driven. Yet you can just with trail marks, you can actually inject extra capabilities as easy as a markdown. So that's where I see it. It's possible, and so if the 2 can work together, and I can sort out how easy to do, then indeed we can have the best of both worlds. We can have the co-created sort of collective record and collectively curated baseline. Yet all these extra flexibilities can be coming in, and as I keep telling nowadays, I'm offering really a kind of stone soup, because the whole point is once we get the web native world and this world interact, then there will be capabilities that will come and we can just leverage over.
Yuri's thing is really cool. So we'll keep working together to get Massive and Trailmarks and Trailhub to talk. And it's going to be super exciting.
It's really all about completing each other. You know, that's the whole point. The wiki, as you described, offers things that are unique to that architecture, which has value. But if you make the two interoperable, then I think we will get somewhere. Yeah.
I think an interesting thing for us, Charles, maybe you and I do this at some point in the long list of maps we'd like to draw, but I'd love to map what the different bodies of code projects that we're looking at, what they're particularly skilled at. So, you know, Yuri and Trailmarks, but Pete and I were just on with a hash MD and a bunch of other stuff between Obsidian, and one of them is really pretty and good at good at one feature, and then the other one, actually one of them is good at building in links, and the other one is good at concurrent access. But there isn't one tool that's really good at both. And so we're busy working these trade-offs, trying to figure out where do we recommend people start? Which of these things is more important originally? And then how might we eventually find our way toward the editor that's sort of all singing, all dancing? And it could be that it pops out of a project like Trailmarks or somewhere else. But I think I would love to know what each of the tools, like what the tool's superpower is.
No. The point about what I'm trying to say, hopefully next week I can demo, is that the basic assumption with Trailmarks and Trailhub, this whole web native stuff, is that there isn't a single best editor, but you should be able to make them all interoperable. That's the point.
I agree. I agree, but I think interoperability will mean a certain level of agreement to concurrent access, how do links and backlinks work,
no. Sorry, no, the whole interoperability is architecturally there because this web native stuff really means that everybody owns their own data. There is no concurrent access, no problem. You have communication channels that you can create in any topology. So the whole point is that all these issues, it's really the ability to connect people to each other, and at the same time using a universal foundational file, basically a drive file in the cloud. And this is what we discussed, that this is why I think that all these Markdown files can be moving freely between these worlds. You know, that's why I like Markdown, that they can be repurposed. They are the best fair data representation of this kind of textual knowledge. Yeah, I don't know whether it was clear what I was trying to say. I don't know. Pete, did it make any sense?
I think so. Just a quick time check. We've got 25 minutes left. I have a wish, and I don't know if this is well-founded or not, but I think I feel a pretty strong need to bootstrap into getting more people able to actually edit in the wiki. And I guess I got a little bit torqued around with HackMD. If HackMD had worked, we could have gotten together a little bit more effectively, and maybe that'll work still.
We should also, one thing I'd love to cover before the end of the call is what's the difference between Massive Wiki and OGM Wiki?
Yeah, I guess I got distracted both times.
Yeah, we never made it to the end of that particular thread.
So OGM Wiki, thanks, Jerry. OGM Wiki is the important thing for this call, right? OGM, maybe I wrote it here. I don't know, even in just the, OGM needs better shared memory, basically, right? And that'll include things like whatever the community wants, but it'll include things like the directories we've been talking about, information, meeting notes, patterns, a pattern library, that kind of stuff. So OGM Wiki is OGM Wiki is the thing that this team and the community is building for itself. Massive Wiki is the platform that it's building on, I think. if you'll notice, I've actually been saying an OGM Wiki. I'm not saying that this is necessarily the OGM Wiki, although I really hope it will turn into the OGM Wiki. But it's going to be, it'll be the first, practical thing that works. Massive Wiki is the thing where finally I felt, for a long time, I knew in my heart that it was going to be MediaWiki that we would be building either a CSC Commons Wiki on, or that we would be building OGM Wiki on, or something like that. MediaWiki is wonderful for Wikipedia, and it's clunky in lots of ways, and there's good reasons to power through and learn the clunkiness and get to love it. I kind of love MediaWiki in certain ways, and I definitely use it, but then with Massive Wiki, it's like, wow, this would be so cool, and this is what OGM really wants, and this is what Kikolab really wants, and so now I feel like super jazzed about an OGM Wiki that's built on top of Massive Wiki. It's going to be a lovely thing, and it collects together a bunch of other things that are going on. Jerry's been pushing since the very beginning, on how we're going to interoperate, and how the brain, Jerry's brain, is going to blossom into a million places on the web, and turn into a shared thing instead of a contained thing. And Massive Wiki is like right under there, right? Yeah. So, still in all, and we've spent too much time on this call about Massive Wiki, I apologize. Still in all, when we're talking about OGM Wiki, a lot of it is just the nuts and bolts of a wiki, how do we get people to start to use it? What's the process of teaching people how to use, this knowledge base rather than a bunch of Google Docs or Microsoft Word or whatever? How do we make it useful for people? How do we organize it, the information and stuff, so that it's usable for lots of people, not just the one or two people who started it. And so OGM Wiki is an application. In technical terms, it's an application built on top of Massive Wiki.
Can I just quickly put in? For me, the OGM Wiki, especially with the Massive Wiki, the point that it's based on Markdown files, that actually immediately opens up the possibility of actually interoperating with all these new fangled network thinking tools. Because all of these
that is the intention.
Obsidian, yes. But what I mean is that in a way, then it can be fed through those. So that really is I think the secret sauce and especially if you make all these tools interoperate, whether it's, and then they could actually contribute to OGM Wiki and basically have a two-way conversation.
That's a reason we're really excited about this. Charles?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm loving all this, and I'm trying to absorb what I can. And so from the, as one of the representatives of regular folks that don't really follow a lot of the language and stuff, I do recall there was a lot of talk back and forth about backlinks. So I'm wondering if Pete perhaps could give and how that relates to this OGM Wiki versus, your previous thinking around MediaWiki and semantic MediaWiki. I do understand enough to know that it was an important thing, and how does that relate now? Backlinks for dummies, please.
Thanks, Charles. Let me switch to a different Massive Wiki in my Obsidian viewer editor. I think I'll pick this one. We don't have, actually, maybe I'll switch to, there's a couple.
I mean, understanding the time is short, and however it's relevant.
No, it's relevant and useful. I don't know about y'all, but I like light instead of dark. And Obsidian is a newfangled thing, so it likes dark. So imagine, if you will, that this is a wiki. It is a wiki. The homepage for Massive Wikis is currently by convention called README. I think this is a good convention, but if it makes me feel a little bit weird too. So this is this one, Massive Example, and this one, Massive Wiki, are the first Massive Wikis to ever exist. So this one, what I did is grabbed a few pages from the Creative Commons site and just pasted them into Markdown, more or less. So if so this README again is the home page. So then if I look at this, the home page links off to a few other pages in here. And if I open this pane on the over here, this is where Obsidian shows backlinks. So then if I click one of these, CC0 maybe.
Sorry, what's the difference between link and backlink? I'm a dummy.
It's funny, I wish I could show you in Stroll because I speak Stroll a lot better than I do.
I can answer the question. The backlink is a link that comes into a page, not goes out. So if you say, show me all the links that come to me, they are all backlinks.
Does that make sense, Charles?
If they reverse them, yes.
It's kind of a misnomer, but thank you for that. It's actually really helpful because
They could be called inbound links. They could be called inbound links.
Yeah,
right?
inbound links is actually a better way of the. But when you look at an inbound link and traverse it the opposite direction, that's a backlink.
Yes. When you
but it's
follow
easier
it
to understand the backlink that it's
okay.
coming because there is a link to me, and the backlink is there was a link to me from somewhere. I can go back to where they linked to me from.
And on that other page you just went to, it looks like a normal forward link. It looks like a normal link referring,
yes, exactly,
taking you to a new page.
It's reversed.
All links viewed from the other end of the telescope are basically backlinks, but not all software supports showing you who's linking to you. So the interesting and distinguishing feature that Pete is demoing right now is Obsidian has this nifty way of showing you what within this namespace is linked back. Actually, is this an Obsidian feature or a Massive Wiki feature, Pete?
It's an Obsidian feature.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, good. So one of the reasons to like Obsidian is for this feature.
But it's a common feature. So
but the brain has no backlinks.
Let me unfortunately do this a little bit slowly.
Another so the brain actually does. That's a different conversation. Sorry, Pete.
The implication of a backlink, when we call it a backlink instead of an inbound link, backlink has the connotation that it was implicitly created, or it's an implicit link rather than an explicit one.
Yeah.
So let me mash up me and Leo from the org-roam, who Jerry and I were talking with on the Pedagogy podcast after party. Leo, the way he explains this is, hey, look at me. I'm opening a door, a link. Let's think of a link as a door. So I'm in this room and I'm opening a door to CC0. And it's like, oh, wow, there's no door back to README in here. But thanks to the wonder of backlinks, Obsidian has got me. They say over here, the door that you went through is to README. And then he did a demo where I'm going to click on README again. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to do a wiki magic thing and make a new link. Okay, one of the magic things about wikis is that you bump to the edge of your knowledge space and you say, I wish that it kept going, and you just say, oh, you name it, and you keep going. So I just created that link, and I'll save the page. And now this link is probably that light color because it doesn't actually exist yet in the database, but it exists in the namespace. So Obsidian and most wikis are totally happy for me to just click that, and then you can type new stuff here. But again, look, I don't have a link back to README. Well, README, where are you? But Obsidian's got me because it says, hey, Pete, just click on here and you'll go back to README. Another thing to note here, Obsidian is doing something fancier, and I don't even know whether or not I can turn this off, but maybe this is kind of a setting or something like that. Not only is it showing me where this page is linked from, but it's also showing me a little snippet of that instance on the page. If this were a larger information space and this link were in the middle of a paragraph or something, it would show me the sentence around it, and I would go, oh yeah, I do want to go here. Or what if, if I had a whole bunch of pages kind of looked that was named the same as README, this would help me pick the right one to go back to. Jerry.
I don't know if it's appropriate right now, but Lauren just asked, or someone just asked about whether the brain has backlinks. I think it was Charles. And it does. And if I can do a 1-minute screen share showing backlinks in the new version of the brain, that might actually help clarify as well. So let me do that. So the brain v12, which just came out, has as a new setting, come on, little preferences. There we go. Has as a new preference, if I go to Notes Editor, see backlinks? If I turn this on, then down here, this just showed up. And so let me close my preference. And I turn it off because I don't really like seeing all the backlinks. They're confusing to me. Or too much. They're not confusing. They're just too much information for me. But if I now, for example, flip the display a little bit so that you can see more of what's going on there, you will see that. This one. Let's go to a different thought. So here's brain function, and what it's going to do. Well, that's really weird because this has backlinks. Okay, so something's broken right now. I think I needed to turn on a different setting because there's clearly a lot of backlinks coming in here. And what the brain is now doing is it's representing here as a map. I think I might have needed to turn something else on. It's representing here as a map of all the inbound thoughts. So map links, let's just turn all this on. There we go. All right, I just got it back. Yeah. And so now you can see it represented with up arrow, left arrow, down arrows, all of the child, parent, and sibling thoughts to the active thought, to brain function right now. And as I move around in my brain, it will automatically now update all these backlinks. Boom, like that. Yeah. And then as we crawled this in Meme Brain, which is a Free Jerry's Brain project, we were deriving effectively the same kind of information. So the brain is now doing this automatically, and I will stop the screen share.
Yeah, just one comment.
Thank you, Jerry.
Just one comment, sorry, that the whole point of the brain, why it was useful even without that it always gave you a way of going back to where you came from. So it basically did a kind of one step at a time. It always shows the inbound links on the left, I think it was. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's the real power of brain, that it had.
That's accessible. Sorry, Jerry, I stepped on the end. Did you?
Sorry, what I mean is that on the panel, it always had a place. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry. On the left, really listing all those things which you can go back to, where the incoming links.
So I'm not sure what you mean, because the visual display of the brain is exactly that. The fact that I can see parent, child, sibling all in one display. Yeah, those are all backlinks actually. And yes, exactly. There's a feature where you can turn on second degree links, and all of a sudden you get little tiny words next to each of the words, which show you. It's basically like a mini brain map around each of the thoughts that's primary in your current screen. I never turn that on because it's just too much info for me. But that would be like second order backlinks in some sense. So for me, I think one of the things I adore about the brain is the backlinks are completely visual and integral to the primary display mode without being a list of, hey, who's pointing here? It's actually integrated into the visual display.
So one more question, which I'm loving all this, and thank you guys. Does that mean either in the brain or elsewhere that this can also be represented as a history, like timestamped?
Yes, depending on how you save the data and what you do with it. And the brain has a little feature that'll show me what thoughts I've been clicking on. It kind of saves those as a log file. So that's one way to do it. In Meme Brain, Marc-Antoine was creating a log file of sorts, but didn't really, develop it very, very deeply because it was just an experiment and didn't have time. But you could do anything you want with that. The feature I've wanted with the brain forever was when I'm showing you my brain, it would be lovely if you had a bookmark feature on your end so that you could go save this, save this, save this. And at the end of our call, you would just get those links, shipped to you automatically because we were collaborating together. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I call that graph picking. Yes.
Sounds great. Pete, we should go back to you on the agenda because we have not that many minutes left.
8 more minutes. Interestingly enough, I think it's worth, well, let's do a little bit more massive wiki demo, and maybe centered around backlinks at least for a little bit longer.
And maybe you want to take a poll about who would like to try to get into. I think it would be Obsidian plus GitHub to sort of participate in the wiki before we wrap the call, and then who we can sort of coach into the infrastructure as you wanted.
Yeah. Actually, put yourself in the wiki channel or
on Mattermost?
Yeah, sorry.
Sounds great.
It's funny, just an alarm bell went off in my head. It's like, don't add people to the wiki before you've talked about the rules of engagement on the wiki.
Cool.
Please feel free to add yourself in the channel. So far, I've got Bill and Rob in OGM Wiki. So don't break it, but on the other hand, you can't break it because it's all got it's all version controlled history stuff. So the backlinks thing is really interesting. I think I wanted to show, I had that break gave me enough time to open up my stroll. So my stroll is a lot of personal notes. So I don't want to like open the stroll willy-nilly, but this is my current best knowledge ecosystem. And I think actually if I go home, one of the things that's on my homepage is personal knowledge ecosystems. And then if I look at personal knowledge ecosystems, Stroll represents backlinks down here, which is, I think, a lot prettier than Obsidian. So you can see, this is a better database. So you can see. So on the other hand, none of these have the context of Obsidian, so I can't see, what's the reference here. I think maybe if well, actually, I can turn on a setting where these are actually headers, and I think it'll have the context, but I won't do that because I'd have to poke around in settings and find it. So anyway, this is my page on my personal knowledge base about personal knowledge ecosystems. You can see that just by the fact of linking to it on this date, right here is where I talked about personal knowledge ecosystems. So this is a really common thing for people in Rome or Obsidian or the brain to do. You just write stuff down, stuff that's important to you, and you go, oh yeah, personal knowledge ecosystems. It doesn't really matter if this page existed or not before I got here, but I put a link to it because I knew it was it's kind of like every time you want to put a highlight to remember that that's an important thing, you just put a link, is the way I think about it. So then it's also linked from the homepage. And then there's something, what is a second brain tool? So this is originally posted to the OGM mailing list, my new favorite second brain tool. And here I put it as I'm not going to make this into running text. I'm going to say that a related page is personal knowledge ecosystem. So there you go. Another thing that I'm doing with people pages. This one is actually a stub. I'm actually, so at some point I probably was writing about Jerry's brain, and I put this is by Jerry Mikulski, and then that makes a implicit incipient link to the Jerry Mikulski page. And then I go in and tag it as a person so that I can look at all my people, which I won't do right here. But then even without me filling out this page or making links or anything like that, these are all backlinks. So these are probably times that I met with Jerry or, you know, mentioned Jerry to somebody else or something like that. So that backlinks thing automatically builds context for you. And it's a beautiful and wonderful thing. And it doesn't always look as ugly as Obsidian now that I'm looking at Obsidian. So to continue the theme, there's another massive wiki called Sandbox. So I think we have basically 3 so far, and maybe I've talked about all of them. This is the first one that Bill and I started hacking together, which was super fun. And we've had Jerry hack this one even.
And Obsidian calls different sort of document sets vaults.
Yeah, that's actually a good thing. So, and then in Git, there will be repos, and then to regular people, it'll be wikis. A massive wiki will be either a wiki or a vault or a repo. So if you kind of look at this, this sandbox wiki in Obsidian, I cut and printed a while ago now a static version of it. So this is just HTML. It looks like a normal website to folks. It has some, you know, navigation links and a cute icon from a Lavender Garden. So even in here, a Lavender Garden is a magical and wonderful static site generator because static site generators haven't caught up with backlinks yet, but a Lavender Garden has. So a Lavender Garden actually goes through, and every time it makes an HTML page out of a wiki page, it says, oh, there's backlinks. So this is yet another instance of backlinks. So wrapping up in the last couple minutes here, we're going to go over a couple minutes, I'm sorry, but not very much. Let's go back to the OGM Wiki. So the OGM Wiki now has a page called, you know, actually a directory called meetings and a page for today's meetings, which I got started with a little bit and didn't do very much. We didn't do very much on. You might have seen me syncing this with the cloud. So it is up here in the cloud now. And you can see that there's a meetings directory and a page that collects the stuff that I typed into Obsidian. If I wanted to, I wouldn't need to figure out how to do syncing. I could actually go to this. I could go to GitHub. Excuse me. I can edit right on GitHub if I'm a member of this wiki, and now we're up to a few people who are members, and we can add more. Without really knowing anything about Git or anything about even Markdown too much, anybody who's a member can go to this pencil here, click this. And then down here, commit is the Git word for save. So I could type a little note here. This is meant to prompt you to type something cool.
And commit is a verb and a noun, is that right?
What's that? Commit?
It's a verb and a noun both?
Yes, it is, yeah. There's some extra stuff down here, just ignore all that. So even this was optional, I didn't have to do that. And then if I say commit changes, it's saved. So in a way, this is a lot like editing just MediaWiki, or it's actually easier than editing Wikipedia. So any one of you, I think, could go to this site and make changes. Probably you won't feel like it yet for another week or so, maybe, but that's okay. And then, so the only problem here is that when I'm editing in this mode, or actually when I'm viewing in this mode, the wiki links are going to just look like brackets. They're not going to be actual links. So you have to kind of navigate through the wiki by hand.
What is that dependent on which editor you're in?
No, it's because GitHub presumes that you're only putting text on these files.
I know, but if you're editing this same page in Obsidian, wouldn't the links be pretty and be linky?
Yes, and
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It depends on what you're editing with, because right now you're in an editor that doesn't know the context.
Yes, exactly. Totally true. What I was suggesting was that, like I was saying, Bill and I have kind of gotten to the point where we're only holding sharp butter knives, and the whole Obsidian thing is, I'm happy to walk anybody through that, by the way, but it's a little bit clunky. If you want to edit the wiki, if you want to edit pages or even comment on them, I think, well, we'll look at that another time. You could actually, right now, as soon as I add you, you have edit permissions for this whole wiki. Oh, let me also show you the kind of like recent changes. If you go to the homepage of the repo and then click this commits, this is all the commits that have ever happened. And if I went to a more interesting wiki like Sandbox.
So briefly, while you're doing that, for anybody who's new to GitHub, GitHub lets people host repositories. That's what repo means. It's a repository of code, or just basically a directory full of something. And then the GitHub method is fork and pull. So when you start playing with code, you basically fork it into your own account. So you make a full copy of it, and then you submit requests to the owner of the actual code to pull your submitted changes into theirs. What we're doing right now, I think, is a little different from that. We're actually doing file sharing in a single GitHub directory, right? We're not really using fork and pull, but we are using versioning and all that. Am I wrong?
We could. It's actually pretty close. What I just did there. So this is an interesting recent changes, by the way. And you can go to each of these and look at what the change was. Red is deleted, green is added. Very, very cool. What I did when I edited yeah, basically there's a mainline branch, it's called, and it's called main actually nowadays. This is the branch. And we're committing directly to that branch. So,
right. So we're avoiding
revising,
fork and pull.
Yeah. Well, I actually hope some people start forking and pulling too. But,
yes, but
we don't need to.
But the way we're doing it right now, we're actually not doing that process, right?
Right.
Okay.
If I went in and edited this,
so if a different community wanted to cooperate with us, they could fork and pull this whole repo, and they could say, hey, we have some nifty additions to wiki definitions. And we would then say, oh, sounds great. And we would then pull it into our version. And then that would be incorporated into the wiki that we're busy curating. So
yeah, and we can decide to pull it or not. We can be
right.
fine-grained about it. We can make comments back to the changes they've made, saying this would be cool, but only if you add to it or add. So even in here, when I'm about to save this change, it will let me create a branch, which is kind of another thing that we could do, but we're not up to that yet. So we commit directly to the main branch. Chunk-based.
What else for this call?
So I think that's it. Anybody else?
Questions? Even if we don't have time to answer them, just throw out questions. Put them in the.
We'll back tomorrow, some of us. So.
Yep. That's right.
How successful was this call?
I thought it was
Thoughts,
great
ratings?
because I learned a bunch. So thank you.
What was your criteria?
It gave me
Um,
an excellent overview of what y'all are doing. It looks like you don't need any help building it. I'm wondering what the next steps of contribution might be for the rest of us. But by all means, we can shove
Plenty
that
of help
until
needed.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would, my hope is that we can really compress down the technical bits and bobs and talk about the content. So I feel like this was a moderate success. We actually did investigate lots of cool things and see lots of cool stuff, and we didn't get much content done. So I'm a little bit sad. But
Michael, did you want to jump in?
I was just going to say it was good to get the framework and the complexities just out there and understood. But yeah, looking forward to the simpler.
let's try. Well, I will try as hard as I can to get us more focused on. So the thing is, and the reason it got started off technically like that is because we kind of need to bootstrap how we can at least edit together. And then editing together on Google Doc and then trying to make that into the wiki is hard. So if we can get a little bit closer to that, then everything is wonderful. And maybe it's just editing on GitHub or something like that.
I recommend we, oh, sorry, go ahead, Judy.
I was just going to say, it all makes a lot of sense. As a slow starter on this, I'm just going to need to practice quite a bit before I can engage directly. But I think the direction it's going is great.
And I was going to recommend we not use these call times to individually get people using the tools and connected.
Absolutely.
Let's try to do that off these calls so that however few the number of people are who can basically edit on a particular repo and with a particular tool, let's then do some screen sharing between them to illustrate how this works and where we're aiming and all of that. Let's use our group time, like I think that way.
Perfect.
Cool. Thank you, Pete. This
Thank
is
you,
really,
everybody.
really, really lovely.
Yeah, thanks.
Happy to do it. Thanks,
Did anybody see the movie Knives Out?
Yeah.
This
It's
is
a wonderful background.
this is the knife chair from Knives Out. This is like a decoration in the murder mystery house.
Sharp edge technology.
Exactly.
It's just one of those days.
Since we were talking about the butter knife and the rusty machete,
butter knives out.
I figured I'd pull out my Knives Out background.
Thanks all. I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Soon.